Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco, here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today is one of our more regular episodes, except we're talking about Slime Rancher, so how regular can it truly be? And I am joined, as always, by Pete, the Slime Rancher, Busby.
I feel like I deserve that. This was this game this week. I thought the cute quotient on our podcast had been dangerously low lately, despite my continued presence on it. So I decided to just bring the cute back, and Slime Rancher it was.
Yeah, that's the rarely heard Justin Timberlake song, Bring the Cute Back, a follow-up to Bring Sexy Back.
When you want to keep things, a little more low-key.
And we are also joined by a special guest, random internet person, Ian.
Howdy. How's it going? What's worse than what's a bad rancher? That's what I would be. It's like, I'm not particularly good at ranching.
You're a slime rustler.
Slime
that's
ruffler.
Bad, isn't immoral.
I'd play slime rustler.
I want there to be slime rustlers in this game now that the concept has popped into my head. I want someone with a bandana just showing up with little vacuum gun 6-shooters.
Riding on a slime, just hopping along. Mount slimes.
Yeah. Either that or on like a wooden horsey.
Just
making noises.
Bad. Uh-huh.
Well, Slime Rancher, we will get to the slime ranching. There is much more to discuss than I thought there would originally be when I first started playing this game. But before we get to that, we've got some feedback. We've got some emails to get to. Remember, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter or at ThatPinguino on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can send an email and sound like this lunatic. It comes from a Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. He knows how to get in touch with me, so I don't know why he sends this as an email, but I guess I appreciate it. So our friend of the pod says, "Hey there, Deep Listens crew. I usually avoid sending you input because I live this podcast more than I'm willing to admit, and every waking hour I spend on it involves torturous ruminations about Final Fantasy games or visual novel horseshit. Regardless, I wanted to share a slight disagreement I have with something you said. On your final Persona 5 podcast, you all exclaimed there are no examples of big-time developers taking a knee to pursue a passion project. This statement is true if you completely disregard the several examples of major developers using crowdfunding platforms to publish rejected or niche games the industry would most likely poo-poo. With the likes of Peter Molyneux, Chris Roberts, i.e. Wing Commander and Star Citizen, Yu Suzuki, the maker of Shenmue 3, Keiji Inafune, and 4 goddamn Double Fine Productions, there are plenty of examples of noticeable game producers and directors using crowdfunding to publish niche passion projects. Say what you will about the final products, but there's no denying that crowdfunding has examples of indie-level passion products from notable game development figures. David Braben's Elite Dangerous was first playable in 2013 and remained in early access for 3 years before officially launching. Since then, he's spent every hour of his work life adding new content to the game. If that isn't a passion project, then I don't know what is. I know a few of these names might not mean a lot to some individuals, but to others, they are video game legends. P.S. I would like you to remind you once again that each of your Persona 5 podcasts didn't crack the 2-hour mark. When you're ready to party with the big boys in the JRPG podcasting arena, give Gino and me a call."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a threat.
Shots. I'd like to say shot not at me, mostly at Pete, I think. Mostly at Pete and Billy, because I am involved in the Final Fantasy X-2 podcast. God.
I like Final Fantasy. Anyways,
so
those are some bold claims. I feel like that's conflating. I'm assuming when you guys talked about it, you may have met game developers as studios, not as people.
So what we were more talking about was specifically this was in reference to The World Ends With You, which is a game that Tetsuya Nomura directed that was for the DS that was funded by Square Enix and released with actually some fanfare, with marketing behind it, with a pretty sizable budget. It was as AAA a game as a DS game can be, which I think is a really different scale than crowdfunded games. Now, some crowdfunding actually reaches financially the level of a AAA game, But that's not quite the same as what we were talking about, where a large-scale studio actually pushes all in on one of these passion projects. This is more an example of a cult of personality type developer, someone who's big enough to command that sort of loyalty from their audience, being able to pursue something that otherwise they could not. So I feel like it's a very different question, though yes, I think Zombie Pie is correct that this is where you get those sort of big, high-level, high-quality passion project games. Oh, my God. Breaking news. My wife has just brought me a Dairy Queen Blizzard. Thank you very much.
See, this is how we know this relationship's built to last. That's a quality relationship right there. What kind of Blizzard is it?
What kind of Blizzard is it? They want to know what Blizzard it is. What is it, Jen?
It's a Reese's Cup Brownie.
Oh, shit. It's a Reese's Cup Brownie Blizzard.
Oh, snap. I think this is a good opportunity for us to, shout out Dairy Queen. If you want to sponsor the podcast, right, we'll take free Blizzards. It's fine.
Thank you, Dairy. Yes, if Dairy Queen wants to sponsor the podcast, get in touch at that Pinguino on Twitter. Pete, do you have anything to add? Because I'm going to need to not talk for a bit.
Yeah, while you pursue your Blizzard, I mean, I think you sort of, hit the nail on the head, right? That it's sort of a different phenomenon when you look to crowdfunding. But it is interesting that video games offer this sort of alternative avenue, perhaps, for auteurs. Like when you have movies, the rationale really is just sort of drop the budget. But Kickstarter or crowdfunding platforms are really interesting insofar as maybe that's not necessarily what you need to do. I mean, granted, if the funding isn't there, it's a necessity. But it's interesting that you could pursue something that still has the same sort of financial backing and in virtue of that, some sort of legitimacy without necessarily involving the overall apparatus of the studio.
Sure. And something that just jumps out to me is that this avenue for a passion project really only exists for those who are already at the peak of the industry, at the peak of their powers. If you did not have success within the last 10 or 20 years, in some cases, this is just not an avenue for you. Whereas ostensibly you could convince a studio to fund your passion project if you've worked there for years and years and years and haven't broke out yet. Like, that could be your opportunity to break out. Like, for example, this reminds me of Double Fine when they were still making AAA games, or making, I guess, more direct-to-download games. I remember Brad Muir was given direction, and he made, what is the name of that game? It was Trenched, but it's not Trenched anymore.
Iron Banner.
Iron Battalion? Banner?
Isn't it?
They renamed it.
Or is that Destiny?
I think that's Destiny. It's Iron Brigade. Iron Brigade. That's it.
So I got Destiny on the mind.
No problem. The artist formerly known as Trenched. And he was able to basically work his way up to being the director of a game that was kind of a passion project, but had the funding of a whole studio behind it. If he had pitched Trenched or Iron Brigade to the Kickstarter community, I have no idea if it would have, made budget.
I even have to imagine that a situation like this would still even have to be the exception, though. Like, for people moving up the ladder like that.
And I have to imagine that there's also the inbuilt, institutionalized sexism and all that stuff that pushes out certain voices from going up that ladder. I wonder how Patreon will work with video games, because video games do require so much money that I wonder if anybody could be that successful on Patreon and still make a game off of it. I've seen a few people do it.
Yeah, it's a really good question, given the initial capital you need. It's not a...
Yeah. Because, you mentioned that Double Fine was getting a AAA money with Kickstarter, but that's not... They got, for Double Fine Adventure, I'm looking at $3.3 million, which is a lot of money, but it's not AAA money. AAA money
not
gets
at all.
Crazy. And then, obviously, if you're on Patreon, you're doing it monthly, and it's not really the same thing. It's interesting, for sure.
They did not get AAA money, but I believe, Shenmue 3, Star Citizen, games like that have actually met a AAA budget.
Those are really rare exceptions, though. And so far, both examples you gave don't exist yet.
Which is not a good sign.
And there's always the fear that whole thing is just going to bottom out as people more and more miss deadlines and miss promises. That, is Kickstarter going to still be a viable thing in 5 years?
And it's also extra scary because how many times can you milk the same fans? Because it's really only the hyper-focused, hyper-aware fans that even know this thing exists. So I wonder how much overlap there is between the fans who backed Star Citizen or Shenmue. How many wealthy people with disposable income, or people with just disposable income, to throw at a game hoping that it will come out. How many times can you do that?
Right.
Eventually, we'll find out.
Eventually, you also hit a Steam problem where there's just so much stuff that it's hard to separate noise. Like a good example is, which is a bummer, is Swery. Like his game didn't make it. Like didn't make funding, I don't think. Which is a bummer. That guy should continue to make any video games that guy wants to make.
Yeah, especially when they are murder mysteries in quiet, sleepy towns.
For sure. This is wheelhouse.
All right, so thank you, ZP, for that. And we also have a, I guess, would you call it a correction or clarification? We have a follow-up from superfan Kyle about his stance on what video game, what JRPG characters we each represent. Just a reminder, he said originally, I was Solaire. Pete, you were some dude from. Let me see what I can. Let me see if I can get the actual names. I was Solaire. You were Goto from Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner, and he said Billy was Yuri from Tales of Vesperia. But he has a correction. Upon hearing of my sparring with Billy, he wanted to update his description of who Billy was, and it says he is now Pyros or Pyros the Third from Dot Hack. And I asked what that meant, and he replied, Pyros talks a big game about a lot of stuff, but doesn't really follow through.
Good update.
Good update.
Good update. Yeah.
I thought that was a good update. On
Astute.
point.
Very astute.
He's learned.
I like how we can just hate on Billy while he's not around.
And if
I mean, we do it if he was around, but it's just more fun that he can't respond.
My favorite part is that he edits the shows, and if I don't give him the timestamp, he's never going to know. So, if you want your feedback or emails or anything to be read on the show, go ahead and hit us up. We will continue to do so. So now, without further delay, it is time to discuss Slime Rancher.
Let's do it.
Why don't you explain what Slime Rancher is?
Sure, I'll do the rundown. So you play Beatrix LeBeau, is that her last name?
Yeah, it's a great name.
It is. You play Beatrix LeBeau, and she's I guess you'd still call it an expat if you're leaving the planet, but she's an expat from Earth who travels to the far, far beyond.
The far, far range.
Far, far range. Of course. This is Western. I should have known. She travels to the far, far range in search of adventure and intrigue and excitement, and she gets a job, oddly enough, ranching slimes.
On the far, far ranch.
On the far, far ranch. In the far, far range. So it's your job as Beatrix LeBeau to create this farm from scratch. You bought a farm from a man who used to live there, and you're now taking it over, and you need to build up these pens. You need to find the slimes, and you feed the slimes. The slimes create plorts. I use create there judiciously. We don't need to get into exactly how these plorts come from these slimes.
They shit them out.
Yeah, they eat and plorts come out. You then collect plorts, sell them for money, new bucks, and then you build up your ranch. That's basically it. There's a little bit of story as it progresses, but overall, basically just building a farm.
Yeah, the person you bought it from obsessively dropped logs all over the island, conveniently for you to read.
So, I guess let's start out with just the mechanics of this game. You're basically... The loop is very simple. It's like many farming games, except in this game you have to go out and capture slimes. And you basically just go out, catch some slimes, put them in a pen, feed them food until they poop out plorts. Yeah, you sell the plorts, and then you make more pens, and you put more slimes in the pens. And you just keep doing that. Eventually you get a couple of things that will help. So at first you kind of have to go out on the range and find everything you need, slimes and food. And even plorts to some extent. Then, as you get further on, you get access to farms, like plots of fertile land that will grow crops for you.
Crops. Or you can raise chickens.
Yeah.
These slimes are carnivorous.
Some of them
eat poultry.
Because that's the other challenge is slimes each have different kinds of foods they want to eat. Some of them have favorite foods, which will generate more plorts, and so the challenge is matching that up. And there are challenges with certain slimes are only keepable in certain pens. So, like if you have a flying slime, you need a cage on top of your slime, your pen, so that it can't fly out.
Yeah, and there's some slimes that, if they're exposed to light, they'll die. There's some slimes that if they're on the ground, they'll die. And so you need to match up the slimes with the cages and with some of their specific preferences.
While we're on the subject of sort of the cages and environments, I think this is a place where, the game could have added some complexity that maybe, it would have benefited from. Like, I remember when I used to play Zoo Tycoon back in the day, like, you had to actually sort of craft these pens. Like, they needed a certain percentage of, let's say sandy soil, a certain percentage of grass, and a certain percentage of water. And in Slime Rancher, it's really all or nothing, right? Like, you either have a roof or you don't. It's either dark or it's not. They're either living in an ash trough for the fire slimes, or they basically extinguish themselves. So, I mean, there's a layer there, but it's not.
Yeah, and it's really easy to get all the upgrades. They're not that expensive, and you just hit yes on all of them, which is interesting because they have different environments for the slime pens. You start out in like a standard area, which is just your basic boring kind of grassy land. But you get a cave, you get a jungle, you get all these different areas, and you don't really ever have to match slimes to areas because the cages can be upgraded to fix whatever problems you have.
Yeah, the only one that really matters is the cave.
Yeah.
Really.
And even the cave, you can put a dimmer on the cages outside so that the slimes that are bioluminescent that will die when exposed to sunlight, you can protect them wherever they are. And it's not like the upgrade's expensive, because I don't know about you guys, money was not a thing for like 90% of this game. Once I was able to figure out how to like optimally raise these slimes to get the most money out of them, I never had to worry about money again. I just upgraded everything as soon as I bought it.
The money system is weird because it has this kind of supply-demand mechanic where the more that you sell the plorts at this board, and every time you sell a plort, if you sell a lot of plorts, then the next day the price goes down. So the price changes each day. So it's trying to encourage you to vary up what you're selling each day so that you're not just tanking the money. But even if you tank the money all the way down, you can still beat it out with sheer volume. You don't need like that much money. So it's not even that big of a problem. Yeah.
For me, I was just trying to move as many plorts as fast as I could because I wanted to get more upgrades to get more plorts. So it didn't make sense to waste time so that the value, like the prices, went higher.
Yeah, no,
it
really
seemed useful.
For sure.
Given the limitations of your storage, like you can only hold at max, I want to say 120 items at any given time, items or slimes. So you're really not really incentivized to hold on for things too long. It's really about turnover as much as possible.
And you could buy storage units. Those are one of the things you can buy in plots, but like they're not really worth it. It's just better to sell that stuff right away. There's even this weird trading system in the game where there's like a trading board where people will request things of you, and I've never engaged with it because the rewards are never worth like what you're trading. Because whatever you're trading, you could just use to generate more plorts for more money.
Yeah, I often found that unless it was super trivial for me to make the trade, like sometimes they wanted carrots. I found that it was actually quite a bit easier to have all vegetarian slimes. So
absolutely.
I invested heavily in fruits and vegetables, which meant that when people came calling for those, I just sent as many as I could as fast as I could. There was no downside.
Yeah, I never cracked a way to have carnivorous slimes work because you can have farms for veggies, and they will generate pretty much enough for an entire pen of slimes every day. But like the way you do carnivorous stuff is you have to have a hen house for hens. And they don't seem to generate fast enough to replenish each day without just reducing your slime amount. So I shied away from carnivorous slimes pretty heavily.
Yeah, the only reason I cultivated them was because they looked like cats, and I liked that.
Well, but you can that's true. But you can get around that though with the Largo stuff. Like that seems to be the only reason the Largo stuff really exists in my mind.
Yes. So I actually thought that this was actually subtly brilliant. So you can hybridize slimes in this game. And when you hybridize a slime, it starts out as one type of slime. If you feed a slime the plort, or colloquially, the poop of another slime, it will hybridize, it will become a fusion of the two slimes, which will have the food preferences of both. Which means that if you take a carnivorous slime, feed it the plort of a vegetarian slime, then it will eat both meat and vegetables. Or I found the easiest thing to do was if you really wanted something to be easy to take care of, you just hybridize whatever the base slime was with a pink slime, because pink slimes eat everything.
Yeah,
and then you just don't have to worry.
For the most part.
Yeah. The only downside to the Largo stuff is like they are physically bigger, so you can have less of them in a pen. But they generate twice. They generate a plort for each type they are, so they generate twice as many plorts. So you kind of want to have some variety, so you're not just only generating 1 million pink plorts, but it makes it really easy.
Yeah, what I did was I just always hybridized with either a pink, if it was carnivorous, or early on I hybridized always with pinks, but then later on I hybridized with just whatever vegetarian slime was near me, and then it was fine. So it just made things super duper easy. But I think that it was kind of interesting. I actually... Someone I'm hoping to have on the show in the near future to discuss the Magic School Bus. This colleague of mine was discussing basically how apple trees are currently grown. Like, it turns out apples, like the apples we eat, are grown from trees that are themselves hybrids. Usually it's a tree that has a fruit stalk that is the fruit that we actually eat, grafted onto a part of the tree that's the root stock that has good, strong roots that will get all the nutrients that it needs. So you end up with a tree that's the part that we eat, the part that's above ground is one tree, and then the part that is below ground is another tree that has been sewn together to make one tree that is useful. And I found I was doing the exact same thing with the slimes. Just like, okay, here's the plort that I actually want, but you're fucking hard to take care of because you want to eat nothing but chickens. So I'm going to feed you, a pink plort just so you're easy to take care of. And the downside to hybridizing and the downside to having slimes that are difficult to take care of is if you don't feed them, they will get rowdy. They will get very rowdy.
That's true.
Yep.
And then they get loose.
But that's only really if it's just so easy to feed them though, because if you just get the upgrades for the cages, you can always. So some of the upgrades are things like you can get something that'll basically automatically feed them. You just give the store food in this thing, and it'll automatically dispense it like every couple seconds. And then if you just keep that stocked, then you never really have to worry about it. And you could get a thing that automatically collects their plorts, so you don't even have to do that. Yeah. So I don't know. I never had a problem with rowdy slimes.
I had it happen exactly once. It was because I died by accident. I missed a jump, and then that just jumps you ahead 12 hours. And by the time I came back to, a few slimes had gotten loose. It wasn't terrible, but some of the downside is if you end up with slimes getting loose, then they can eat all of your food. They could get into the other pens, and then you can have problems because this game has weird. So. Okay. I mentioned how there were hybrid slimes. You might think, well, if 2 are good, what about 3? This game says no. Because vehemently. Because if you give a Largo, which is a hybrid slime, 1 more plort that is of a different slime type, it becomes tar, which is a always feral, always aggressive, black and rainbow slime that eats other slimes and turns them into tar also.
Yep. So it can pretty much take over the whole farm if you don't take care of it quickly enough.
And all it produces is death.
The only way to get rid of it, too, is you have to spray it with water, which requires a special upgrade to your gun. Yeah, it's weird.
Or you can burn them in the incinerator.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the easiest way to do it, but yeah, you can throw them in the ocean.
Yeah, that was my move. I was shot in the ocean.
You can also eventually get you can build stuff with. I'm sure we'll talk about it later with slime science that'll basically automatically deal with them. You can build turrets that'll deal with it.
I mean, it never was a problem on the ranch for me, but I did find the implications somewhat troubling of a system that basically says, okay, the mixing of 2 pure slimes is okay. But once you get a 3rd in there, then it becomes tar.
Very weird.
Gross. And then it destroys all of slime civilization.
Yeah, it's one small step from this is just Mendel's genetics with peas. We're just hybridizing to oh, now we're getting into like the purity of slime races, and it's a
Yeah.
very small leap between.
And it's one of those things where you can see the mechanical reason why they did it, because they wanted to make sure that you couldn't just get like a million slimes in one slime, and that's all you ever did was have the all hybrid slime for all of your slimes. But I feel like there are other ways they could have solved that mechanically.
Yeah. I think mechanically what they were going for was putting some danger into your ranch so that if slimes got loose, there's a potential that everything can go completely to chaos. But I found that one never happens, and two isn't that big a deal even if it does, because it's not like replenishing your farm is that hard.
No,
I think they may have also done it to have a mechanism for which the world can clear slimes, because slimes just spawn all the time in the world. There are spawners in the world, and they spawn forever. And I feel like the tars are kind of a way for the world to automatically reset a bit, so it's not just overrun with slimes all the time. But once again, I think there's other ways they could solve that problem.
and they do it, I think, so early on in the game when you're first exploring the first area, which is a dried out reef, in the morning there's only 3 types of slimes: pink slimes, tabby slimes, and rock slimes, but most of the time they don't occupy the same space. At night, phosphor slimes come out, and then you have 4 types of slimes kind of hanging out in the same area, and then the potential for tar is pretty high. So early on in the game, it tells you, oh, if you're not upgraded, you shouldn't go out at night, and I think that's their way of kind of teaching you not to go out at night, is to have this potential monster come out. But I found that I was not, in danger at any point after
never.
The first night.
No, it's more of an inconvenience, really. Than anything else.
There's also a different mechanism they have for danger, too, which is that sometimes slimes in the wild will just be feral, and they'll just be mad, and you have to either feed them to make them not mad, or they'll attack you. So they already have a different mechanic to present danger to you. Not that you even need danger in a game like this. I don't think that's really the draw.
No, that was the weirdest thing, was I didn't think this game needed enemies. I thought exploring was kind of the thing. I've never played Animal Crossing and said, what if there were wolves that might attack me?
But what if there were wolves?
I'd befriend them. I'd get it a T-shirt, and then we'd hang out, and it'd send me letters.
And it'd ask you to go get them furniture?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like there's a ton of danger in Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon, it's not like the cows go, they get mad cow disease and attack you if you don't feed them regularly. No,
just natural disasters.
And that's the biggest danger of them all. That's the biggest enemy of them all.
For sure.
So it was a weird thing. I think mechanically I understand it, but I think that ultimately the enemies, even the feral slimes, they were used mainly to gate some areas, but not that much. I just ran past them. Did you ever die? That's a good question.
From a slime, no.
No, yeah, never from a slime attack.
Definitely jumped off of things by accident.
Yeah, that was it for me. It was always, I forgot to wait for a few seconds, and then I ran out of jetpack juice. Which I think leads me to my next question. Waiting. I feel like that's one of the big lessons of this game. Patience.
Well, if we were actual farmers, it would make perfect sense. But
well, the thing that I feel like, so every farming game, because I play a ton of these, but every farming game has some sort of forced waiting period at the beginning. And then as you play more and more of the farming game, you get things that help automate it. So, for example, on Harvest Moon, you get things like the gnomes. The gnomes will automatically do things like water your plants or harvest your crop, etc. Stardew Valley, you get sprinklers that'll automatically water your plants. This game has some of that, but all of the automation is not to reduce... It's all just to reduce travel distances. You can't ever get to a point where, for example, it automatically harvests your crops and feeds your slimes. It can make it so it's easier to get those crops to the slimes, but you still have to do that. And you typically have to do it every day because it doesn't grow enough food, and you can't store enough food.
Yes. I found personally that I never even bought the slime feeder upgrade because usually it was just faster for me to vacuum up whatever crops came and just shoot them into the cages, and then whatever they don't eat, they don't eat. It usually wasn't a problem. The slimes paced themselves pretty well.
The slime feeder is also a little buggy too, which is funny to me. A lot of stuff in the game, when you do something like sleep through the day, will work. So like if you sleep through the day, a farm will grow its crops. The slime feeder doesn't. The slime feeder,
Really?
if you sleep through the day, it doesn't go. So you will wake up and all your slimes will be mad at you until
That's
the feeder
ridiculous.
comes. Yeah.
The game actively encourages you to sleep.
Yes.
Weird. I found that the plort collector would be a little buggy sometimes. It would not pull stuff in on a necessarily regular interval. It wasn't a huge problem because you could hit a button that just like made it vacuum in all the plorts, but wow, the feeder not working. That's bad.
The deeper issue here, I think, really is, suppose you could automate everything, and maybe counterfactuals are a crummy way to talk about video games, but suppose you could automate everything, right? Like, what would you do then? Like, there's no room really for larger, intensive upgrades beyond just, let's add a roof to this pen. Like, what would you fill your time with without the daily tasks?
I guess the argument I would say is you wouldn't want to automate everything, but you'd want to automate enough to give you space to explore. Because that's the contention, is like,
Right,
I never felt like I had enough time to actually just go out into the world and do stuff without making it so my slimes would miss food or get mad at me, etc. You definitely can't automate everything. It's not Factorio or whatever.
Yes. I mean, for me, I found the most compelling moments of this game to be when I was actively exploring the far, far range and using the jetpack, using the jump jets, and jumping around, because I think the movement in this game is actually quite good.
Yeah.
By the end of the game, or at least by the end of the time I felt like playing this game, I could basically look at a place and go, I can get up there, I think. That's a flat enough surface. I wonder if the game wants me to go up there. And then I could, through a series of jumps and flying, get over there. And usually there'd be a hidden treasure or a special slime or something up there. And that was 90% of the fun I had in this game. Running back to my farm to get money so that I could get the upgrades to do more exploring was way less enjoyable.
Yeah, I also think that it is a well-designed world. I agree with something you said earlier, Peter, where I think it is adorable. Like I think they nailed the art style really well, and I really liked just seeing more stuff in the world, and the different kind of like little slimes that show up are really neat. Like the radioactive slime was really fun when I saw that one.
And nominally, exploration's the whole point of the game, right? Like that's why Beatrix goes on this whole journey, right? It's not like she had a huge passion for farming or slime ranching or whatever. I mean, as you get, some more backstory from, the person who you bought the farm from, exploration's really the thing he's focused on as well.
Yeah, and it made it kind of a bummer because the further I got into the game, the more I just didn't want to expand my farm because I knew that meant I would have to spend more time, ferrying food back and forth between these pens. And so I just kept my farm relatively small so that I didn't have to worry that much about it, and then tried to spend the rest of my time going out and surveying areas. So even as I was expanding my pens and all that stuff, I usually wouldn't even put anything in them. I wouldn't even grow crops because it wasn't worth my time.
That's actually more interesting when you think about it that way, right? Can we just get into spoilers now while we're at it?
What spoilers?
Yeah, right. I mean, there's very minimal story, but the central conceit of this game is that there's a fundamental conflict between the impulse for adventure and the impulse to sort of put down roots and have a stable life, right? So at the heart of the game, it's a decision that Beatrix sort of made outside the parameters of the game, where she left, presumably the person she loved, to go on this adventure, right? The same way that the person who you bought the farm from, he had an option to either go out and explore the stars or stay with the woman he loved on her farm, and he ultimately decided to stay. So, maybe the game wants this sort of dynamic where you have to make a choice, right? Like you can either explore this world they've given you, or you can make the best damn slime farm you have, but you can't do both. Now, I don't think that's the best way to design a game, to say you can't enjoy all of it, but it's interesting if you try to sort of fit it in the parameters of the story.
I actually think that it would be a really interesting way to design a game, but I wonder, because I never got a sense for what the end game would be of doing the slime stuff. Like, what do you get out of it?
More slimes, I guess. I don't know.
The only reason you need money is to buy upgrades to explore. Like, that's all the money's really used for.
And occasionally you make some slime science things that make things slightly more efficient, but it's not as though if there was a depth to raising the slimes and breeding the slimes and all of that, it'd be one thing, but there isn't. You basically hybridize them once, and then they become a largo, and then you get twice as much plort value out of them, and then you're good.
Yeah.
So there isn't that much depth in the farming.
This is where...
And as an example of like a game that had these sort of splitting paths, and it wasn't very subtle about it, but you can't do both paths, is Stardew Valley, another farming game, right? You can either go the path of rejecting society and staying with like the old country way of doing things, or you can go towards Jojo Mart and like the modernization, industrialization of farming. And obviously one path is presented as being much worse than the other, but you can't do both. And I think that's like, if you want to tell that kind of story, then you need some sort of path to make sense of those things, other than just being like, I don't know, it's just, it's in the abstract.
Yeah, and I would say that it's interesting that this game kind of requires you to be dual in nature. Yeah, you cannot just simply abandon the farm and go out and explore because you don't have the plorts to actually make exploring useful or, facilitate your ability to go out. You won't have the upgrades necessary. But also you can't stop exploring, because if you stop exploring, then your plorts will devalue and you won't find new slimes. So you kind of...
bored.
Yeah. Also, you'd be super bored.
You also can't learn anything about the story you mentioned without exploring. It's all told through audio logs or
text logs.
Yeah.
He's a big vlogger.
I think part of the problem is they landed on this conceit where you're going to have just discrete types of slimes, right? Mm-hmm. Like at most you can have a combination of two, like Gino said. And it's fun in terms of like, oh, you have an art style, you have these unique slimes. But if they just, instead of having, let's say, slime types, they instead just had slime traits that you could perhaps combine a little bit more fully, then you have a little bit more combinatorial complexity where breeding the slimes becomes, a task and adventure in and of itself, as opposed to just these one-to-one mixes.
So I'm guessing you'd fall on the side of staying at the farm.
Well,
you want more complexity in the farm stuff so that part is just more entertaining and more fun.
I like the slimes. I wanted to spend more time with the slimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the slimes were pretty good.
Yeah.
What was your favorite slime?
That's a tough one. I think I like the fire slimes the best.
Ooh, those are good ones.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier the rad slime, I think, looks really cool.
Yeah, the radioactive one was cool.
I like the water slimes. I like the puddle slimes.
The inverse of the fire slime, really.
The only ones that you can't put in a cage.
They will not be caged. I enjoy that so every slime has a slime toy that they prefer, and if you put a slime toy in there, it will have a calming effect on the slime. And the slime toy that the puddle slimes enjoy is a rubber ducky.
Ah, that's great.
Spot on.
As soon as I put a rubber ducky in with the puddle slimes, they all went up to the rubber ducky and bumped up against it, and it made it squeak.
Yeah, I mean, I think they nailed the aesthetic. Like one of the other like fun little things, the cats, the cat slimes, they will steal food but not eat it. They'll steal the food and hide in other places.
Yep.
Which is just adorable.
And they'll jump up and hit you. There's an achievement you get for a cat slime running up to you, jumping into your face, and then you get the achievement titled Boop.
Nice.
But then there's also an achievement you get, and admittedly they make you feel bad for getting it. But if you put a chick in the incinerator, you get an achievement for that too.
Wait, how'd you find that one, Pete?
Yeah.
I saw it on the wiki. I saw it on the wiki, and then I was like, all right, I better. And then I did it. I'm not going to act like I didn't burn that chick.
Monster for points.
It was like, see if I could.
I just wanted to see it die.
I just want to watch the world burn. I exclusively raise fire slimes.
Yeah, I as soon as I got explosive boom slimes, I just hybridized them with the pink slime because I did not want them to get out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have tabby slimes. I had, I think, pink tabby slimes because tabby slimes are carnivorous. Which is so much harder to do.
I had pink tabby slimes and phosphorus.
Phosphorus, the light up
ones. The flying nighttime ones.
Lightning bug slimes.
Yeah, I do enjoy the basic loop of this game, or at least I did the first 5 to 6 hours. When I realized that it was going to be the exact same loop, that many hours later, I was confused and decided to not play anymore. And I think I should mention, like, when I was unlocking, various levels, you get different expansions onto your ranch. You get a cave, you get some docks, all these cool little environments. And then eventually there's one that's the most expensive, that is the Slime Science Ranch or something. Slime Science Center. Once you go there, it implies that it's going to unlock this whole new, section of the game. And I was like, oh man, maybe am I going to get to make cool new slimes or something?
Yeah, I was thinking it was going to be the thing Peter mentioned earlier, where it's like, oh, you're going to get really into the DNA of these slimes, and you're going to combine them in really fun ways.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. I mean, when it said slime science, I'm like, great, I'm going to make some sciencey slimes. Let's do this. That was not what it was. You go in there, and it's just like, oh, we need resources to make slime science. I'm like, great, okay, I'm going to give you plorts. Now what? You need to buy a blueprint from the machine. Oh, great. What's the blueprint? Is it going to be DNA slime? What do we got? And then I looked at the blueprints, and it's like a silo to hold more plorts.
Yeah. So the slime science is just like their crafting system, where you combine. Well, first off, you have to pay plorts to get extractors, which can extract materials from the ground that you can't normally get. Things like rocks, oil, etc. So that's like the first level. And then the next level is you can use those ingredients to then build more complicated stuff. But it is mostly like structures. I think it's all structures.
Yeah, and all of the structures are things that, like you said, Ian, there's one that defeats tar. There's some that, are transporters that let you transport things from one part of your farm to the other. There are teleporters. I thought the teleporter would actually be pretty nice if I could actually make it. That'll just allow you to shortcut 2 places. But again, these are all things to just save some of the busy work.
Yeah, and it's almost all distance related. So, for example, the depots, which are the things that let you deposit things in one place and get them out of another. They're not automatic. You have to shoot them into the depot and then suck them out of the other. So they transport the material, but you still have to then do the extra step of then moving those to where you actually need them to be, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, it just basically frees up inventory slots. It doesn't, because you physically have to go from one end of the depot to the other.
Yes, and there's things like you can add you can build something that makes it so that you can deposit plorts into a remote refinery or a remote market instead of having to go back to the market board, which does cut down on movement time significantly, especially if you have multiple areas of farms. But you still then have to do the thing where you have to physically move them between the two.
Well, you guys are overlooking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's through slime science that you can build a mustache for your slime as well.
Well,
so
okay.
Let's not overlook that aspect.
No, you're right. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 categories in slime science are just curios and decorations, which are just
There's a basketball hoop, which I built because it was.
What did you build?
There's a basketball hoop. You can play like slime basketball.
So just looking it out here, you got a mustache, you got sunglasses.
Yep.
That's pretty sweet. You can get like those Groucho Marx eyebrows.
Getting googly eyes too.
Yeah, a monocle. Okay, slime science is redeemed.
That's fair. So, Pete, how high did you get in your slime basketball game? Like, how many points are we talking here?
Honestly, I don't even remember. You just like shoot slimes at the basket, and if it goes, you get
Can
points.
you place it anywhere, or can you only place it on those like build points?
I'm pretty sure you can only place it. I placed it on the build point. I didn't try to place it anywhere else.
So for context, when you're building stuff in this one, you can't place the things you build anywhere. There are like specific points on the map that you can build things at. It was a little restrictive.
It was a nice little diversion for like a minute or two. And I was like, all right, I guess I should get more plorts.
I guess I need to build more hoops.
Yeah.
Just endless hoops. So would you say that you're the slime Joe Johnson? What slime Jeremy Lin? What are we talking here?
Let me think here. I think I'm slime Ray Allen, but like Milwaukee Bucks Ray Allen. Like when he had like the distance shot, but he was also cutting to the hoop.
Okay, so you're a little obsessive compulsive, but you're very accurate.
Yeah.
It's fitting. It's a good person to emulate for a farming video game.
Yeah, right. I think it's appropriate.
Something I feel like I need to look up after this is to see if anybody's done anything truly crazy with the slime science stuff. Because I feel like there are some things that you could do. Like there's a spring pad where if you throw things onto it, it launches them. So I wonder if there's just someone who's done crazy slime science.
Like slime trick shots or something.
Yeah, like a spring pad to basketball so that you can just be dunking slimes all day.
A slime slam ball.
Oh my god. Okay, we might need to make slime slam ball.
Yeah, we might need to turn this whole game around. This might become a sports simulator as opposed to a farming simulator. Maybe we were playing this game wrong all along.
Yeah, definitely.
Just get multiplayer on, and then we can make this work. We're coming for you, Rocket League. Well, I don't have too much else to talk about Slime Rancher. This game was pretty fun. I enjoyed it from
Definitely.
what I played of it.
Yeah,
I wish there was a little more, though.
Yeah, I think you're right, Gene. But there is one more thing sort of I wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay.
And that's just the sort of general idea of the far, far range. Like when you think about, so Westerns as a genre have sort of, they have an illustrious history in the United States for obvious reasons, right? Like you think about somebody like John Wayne. John Wayne was in hundreds of movies in his career, and he only really played two things. He played a cowboy or he played a soldier. He also played Genghis Khan in a horrendously racist movie that basically took place in the Nevada desert, and a lot of people got cancer. But that's
no!
Wow.
Yeah, that they think that's basically what killed John Wayne. But yeah, can you imagine John Wayne playing Genghis Khan?
Wait, the racism killed him?
No, well, the cancer might have been punishment for the racism, because he was beyond Genghis Khan, just sort of generally racist. But regardless, right? So you think about Westerns and sort of the illustrious history they had, but it's a genre that's really fallen off, right? Like you don't see Western movies anymore, really. No Country for Old Men aside.
And now, when there is a Western, it is a commentary on Westerns. It is not
Or
Western.
it's space Western.
Exactly right. That's the point I wanted to bring up, right? And ask sort of, if we look at Slime Rancher, how that idea of the frontier, right? Because that's what the West was, really. They were frontier stories. How that frontier has moved into space, but still explicitly, in a lot of cases, has the trappings of a Western, right? So like Firefly would be the most obvious example, right? If you think about something like Slime Rancher, right? We're taking the Western motif, basically the job that Westerns and the idea of the frontier were doing for society before, we're now using space to serve the same function.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's, as they say, the final frontier. It is the spot where we still have that imagination of unfettered space and, freedom.
But
and outlaws.
Exactly, right? But why employ the explicit trap? Like, this isn't like just a space exploration game. This is very explicitly a Western in space, right? So why continue those trappings, especially when like there's pretty much no reason for them at this point?
You mean specifically like the hats and the
the
slide guitar and
like what's the functional rationale for it at this point? Like there's no historical antecedent for it once you go beyond Earth.
I mean,
nostalgia
could just be shorthand, yeah. Nostalgia, like it is a genre unto itself at this point, the space western. So it seems like it's an easy motif to pick up.
And I mean, especially for a game like this, where like the point is explicitly like being independent, being on your own, makes sense in a frontier context.
Well, and I think at least in America for sure, people still like the idea of the Western. I mean, Deadwood was super successful. I'm trying to think of other ones off the top of my head that aren't just Firefly. But they've also been successful in other areas, like Bebop, Cowboy Bebop, the anime is essentially a Western.
I just call it Cowboy Bebop, sure.
So they come around every now and then, but like I think you want that nostalgia, and you want Westworld. That's obviously
Westworld. I say you could even use Dune, depending on how widely you wanted to go with it.
True, but like I think you do it because you want that nostalgia and that setting, but you don't want all the complicated stuff that comes with being a Western.
I think that like you don't have genocide of native species.
Yes, it's not.
I shouldn't say species, native peoples.
And buffalo.
And buffalo, and species.
And beyond that, even just like the general cultural attitudes at the time and all that stuff. It's like that's why most Westerns, as you mentioned today, are more commentaries on the Western that are looking back and saying, like, oh, maybe it wasn't that good at the time. Maybe it's not something you should romanticize. But Space Western allows you to have some of the same themes that we thought the Western period was about, while conveniently not having any of the terrible stuff that it actually was about.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know which I enjoy more, the prevalence of space truckers or the prevalence of space westerns.
So it is weird that like space truckers.
They come across pretty heavily. I mean, Cowboy Bebop has an entire episode about space truckers.
That's a good episode.
StarCraft.
8 episodes. Yeah, I love me some Jim Raynor.
And Futurama has a couple episodes of space trucking in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the same thing, right? Of like trucking was kind of a frontier of like people who trucked when across the entire country when they're trucking, right?
Yeah, it is a weirdly romanticized, like for such like a sort of not dirty, but like very explicitly blue collar profession.
Right.
It is really romanticized.
I mean, all you have to do is look at Convoy, right, to see that people have always romanticized it.
Yeah, I just want now some sort of true confluence between space truckers and space westerns. I just want a world. It is a space western, but there are space truckers moving throughout it.
So it's a game where a convoy is happening, a convoy of space truckers.
Yes.
And you're a bandit, and you have to do a
space
convoy
bandit
heist. Yeah, it's a convoy heist.
Great.
Well, you know what would bring me back to Slime Rancher is if we had to do every once in a while slime cattle drives, like across space.
Oh my god, that would be so much better.
Or if you just ever went to space and it wasn't just on a planet.
Yeah.
Like that'd be cool.
Hell, if I had to drive those slimes, 200 miles down my range, that would be pretty good. Just keep shooting a little ball of yarn out in front of the tabby slimes, and they just chase it.
Oh yeah,
you can only drive the phospho slimes at night. This is a good DLC. Whoever made Slime Rancher, they better listen to our podcast.
Just make it more space western.
You just lean in.
Pretty good. I mean,
I don't know. I need more people to make more space train murder mysteries. Talking about western genres. Like I feel like that was a western genre, and I want it to be back again. Murder on the Space Oriental Express.
What was that anime that was on a train?
Oh, anime? Do you mean the movie that was just an allegory for society that was on a train?
No, that was Snowpiercer. That was a good movie.
Snowpiercer?
But no,
that was an anime that was on a train?
Yeah.
And it's not Snowpiercer?
No,
How do I not know what this is?
Like, this is old. I remember watching it one Christmas. Yeah, well,
Dragon Ball Z?
Yes, no, Dragon Ball Z Kai.
I'm mad I don't know about it because I feel like I know a lot of train-related things.
I mean, I could be just, fever dreams or something, but I think I remember it.
Naruto. That's it.
Yeah, the third movie?
Yes, the third movie, the capture of the train.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, sure.
Ninjas versus train.
You know what?
Win.
I was immediately thinking when we were talking about space westerns how much I would love to see just different genres applied to space, like a space ninja story or space dramas.
Yeah, we basically just get the one, which is space military, which I think is the most boring one, by far.
Where are the space rom-coms?
You know what would be a good one? Like if you took a Jane Austen book and set it in space, like it's just Space Parlor.
Yeah, that'd be pretty great.
Pride and Prejudice and space instead of zombies.
Like a space detective is, come on.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But I want a guy and a girl. They're on a space jog, and then the gravity goes off, and the gravity goes off, and they bounce into each other, and it's like, oh my god, I knocked your coffee out of your space coffee out of your hands. Let me help you clean that up, and then they're destined for each other.
Moby Dick in space would be awesome.
There was a Futurama episode.
Yeah, Mobius Dick.
Yeah, well, because that's the problem is you'd always be able to see the whale, unless like in Futurama where it moves through other dimensions.
Yeah, it's a 4-dimensional whale.
Or it can just go invisible. It's a space.
Yeah, totally.
Anything
make this work.
In space. It's a frontier.
So I think that is all this space western talk means we are done with Slime Rancher. Which, thank you, Slime Rancher. I enjoyed you for the most part. You were pretty solid any final thoughts on Slime Rancher?
Yeah, great aesthetic, right? Very cute. I got, the level of cute I wanted out of it. There's just like you said, Gino, there's not quite enough there.
Yeah, I don't feel bad with the time I spent on Slime Rancher because, like you said, great aesthetic, all that stuff. But I also would say, if you're playing it, don't feel bad if you just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my constant state. Was I'm enjoying the time I'm putting in with it right now, but I realize that the time is rapidly coming to a close.
I don't need to put in any more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's time to pick the next game for the podcast, and I believe it is either my turn or I have two games that I'd like to touch on. One is Dying Light.
Okay.
And one is Hellblade.
Well, look, I don't know anything about either of them, but just based on the title, Hellblade sounds kind of exciting.
Yeah, so we're going to end up talking about both of these. I don't know which order, though, because I've got a guest who would like to play Dying Light, and I want to pick Hellblade. Actually, I also have a guest who wants to talk about Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, though you know the guest. So I think let's start playing. Let's split up. I will communicate which one is truly coming up next, but just know, listeners, that those are the two games we will be talking about either over the next two episodes. All right.
Good. Yeah, let's
Sound good.
Are they?
Thank
wait,
you.
Are they
What?
cute?
Are they cute?
No.
Very much not.
Yeah,
Neither
Hellblade
of
doesn't sound like it'd be cute, but just checking.
Yeah, Dying Light is a zombie game,
Mm-hmm.
Not cute.
and well, I don't
Zombie-
know, maybe.
Zombies could be cute. I'm looking forward to the Slime Rancher's next project, Zombie Rancher.
All those chicks crawl out of the incinerator. I'm just like, what have I done?
No, I just can't wait till my farm hands, when the slime farm's coming on hard times, and I just don't have enough zombies. Some of my farm hands are going to be going missing. So we will be playing Dying Light and Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. We will communicate via Twitter which one is coming up next. So thank you, Pete, as always.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you double back next week.
Yep, and thank you for filling in, Ian.
No problem. It was very fun.
And remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. So, till next time, peace!